Marge shot Jimmy the Greek Snyder and one of the deadliest fires in the city's history.
It all made news this week and decades past right here on Rochester's first TV station. Here's News 8 Now's Dave McKinley with News 810.
It was just 10 years ago this week when the era of the Megaplex came to Monroe County, or so we thought. AMC announced plans for a 30-screen movie theater, replete with those now quite common but then unheard of stadium-style seats. It was to be built here in Canal Ponds Business Park in Greece, but never was. Cincinnati Reds owner Marge Schott uttered the infamous words which would lead to her second suspension from baseball. These were the ones where she lauded the accomplishments of Adolf Hitler. And numerous people plan to curtail upcoming vacations because of rising gas prices, which had soared to nearly $1.37 a gallon. Ah, the good old days of just a decade ago this week in 1996. 20 years ago this week. I can't believe it's true. Almost no one could.
It is the largest loss of life in a single blaze since 1962.
6 members of the same family, 5 of them children under 9, perished in what was among Rochester's deadliest fires of the 20th century. The Elgin Street blaze is remembered for more than loss of life, though, for it was the one which prompted legendary Fire Chief Len Huther, upon learning the flames had been sparked by kids playing with matches, to find a dramatic, controversial, and unforgettable way to make a point.
Children playing with fire can kill just as much as this gun can kill.
When he died in 2000, Len Huther was remembered for many things, and one of them was the time he boldly brandished a pistol before stunned reporters to drive home his point about avoidable tragedies this week in 1986. 30 years ago this week, Jimmy the Greek Snyder was at the height of his fame, a fixture on national TV. We asked him to handicap the 1976 presidential race.
And Humphrey will be the Democratic nominee.
Hopefully you didn't take the Greek's advice this week in 1976. 40 years ago this week, the tallest crane ever to come to Rochester was delivered for assembly, appropriately enough, to aid in construction of the city's tallest ever building, the 30-story wroc Tower. Meanwhile, there were plans to give a popular cultural attraction a massive expansion and facelift. Look carefully as we pose this week's News 8 Then Pop Quiz. Do you recognize what this is under plans being considered this week in 1966? Flower City visitors that week included Vice President Hubert Humphrey, who before heading to a greet and grip at the Rochester Club was asked if the Vietnam War protesters who'd gathered to wait for him were of any concern. He said no. In fact, he'd be more concerned if someone did not protest what we were doing over there in the days of News 8 Then.
Now the answer to this week's News 8 Then Pop Quiz.
Do you recognize this local attraction as it was envisioned under a proposal being considered 40 years ago? Does it look like the Seneca Park Zoo to you? Well, that's what the zoo was supposed to look like, but these plans were never carried through. It would be another 30 years before any significant improvements were made at the zoo.